Szanowni Państwo, na dzisiejszych obchodach pragnę powitać byłych więźniów obozu oraz ocalałych z zagłady. Witam głowy koronowane, prezydentów, premierów, szefów parlamentów oraz przewodniczących wszystkich delegacji państwowych. Witam przedstawicieli Parlamentu Polskiego i parlamentarzystów z Europy i świata. Witam członków rządów z Polski, Europy i świata. Witam reprezentantów korpusu dyplomatycznego. Witam darczyńców, którzy wsparli Fundusz Wieczysty Fundacji Auschwitz-Birkenau Filary Pamięci. Witam reprezentantów kościołów i wspólnot religijnych, w tym wspólnot i gmin żydowskich, a także społeczności romskiej. Witam przedstawicieli władz regionalnych i samorządowych. Witam reprezentantów wszystkich instytucji i organizacji oraz wszystkie pozostałe osoby, które przybyły na dzisiejsze obchody. O zabranie głosu proszę prezydenta Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej, pana Andrzeja Dudę.
Czcigodni ocalali, świadkowie zagłady, Wasze królewskie mości, Wasze książęce wysokości, szanowni Państwo prezydenci, premierzy, ministrowie, ekscelencje, dostojni goście, Panie i Panowie. Na rampę zajechał właśnie pociąg. Z towarowych wagonów poczęli wysiadać ludzie i szli w kierunku lasku. Kiedy wstawałem z rana do mycia podłogi, ludzie szli. Kobiety, mężczyźni i dzieci. Wychodziłem nocą przed blok, w ciemności świeciły lampy nad drutami. Droga leżała w mroku, lecz słyszałem wyraźnie oddalony gwar wielu tysięcy głosów. Ludzie szli i szli. Z lasu podnosił się ogień i rozświetlał niebo, a wraz z ogniem podnosił się ludzki krzyk. Przez dnie i noce ludzie szli. Na rampę nieprzerwanie przyjeżdżały wagony i ludzie szli dalej. Tak ukazał Auschwitz latem 1944 roku polski więzień tego obozu, pisarz Tadeusz Borowski. Tłumy ludzi idących, prowadzonych, zapędzanych na masową śmierć. My w Polsce dobrze znamy prawdę o tym, co tu się działo, bo opowiadali nam to nasi rodacy, którym Niemcy wytatuowali obozowe numery. Mija 75 lat od zakończenia tego potwornego, przerażającego, zbrodniczego koszmaru, który w tym miejscu rozgrywał się przez blisko 5 lat. Mijają już prawie 3 pokolenia od tamtego dnia, 27 stycznia 1945 roku, kiedy kilka tysięcy więźniów, wycieńczonych okrucieństwem oprawców, niewolniczą pracą, głodem i chorobami, doczekało się wreszcie wyzwolenia przez żołnierzy Armii Czerwonej. Są tu dziś wśród nas ostatni żyjący ocaleni, którzy przeżyli piekło Auschwitz. Ostatni z tych, którzy na własne oczy widzieli zagładę. Wśród nich ci, którzy doświadczyli losu narodu żydowskiego, o którym mówi Psalm 44, zabijają nas przez cały dzień, uważają nas za owce prowadzone na rzeź. Zgromadziliśmy się tutaj, członkowie 61 delegacji z całego świata, aby wspólnie uczcić Międzynarodowy Dzień Pamięci Ofiar Holokaustu. Stajemy przed bramą obozu, w którym śmierć poniosło najwięcej ofiar i który stał się symbolem zagłady. Składamy hołd wszystkim 6 milionom Żydów zamordowanych w tym oraz innych obozach, gettach, miejscach kaźni, na ulicach miast, miasteczek. Stajemy tutaj przed wami, czcigodnie ocaleni, aby w obliczu świadków zagłady podjąć jeszcze raz zobowiązanie. Podjąć zobowiązanie z myślą o tych, którzy zginęli, o was, którzy ocaleliście, ale i o przyszłych pokoleniach. Ludobójstwo popełnione tutaj przez funkcjonariuszy hitlerowskiej III Rzeszy pochłonęło ponad 1 300 000 ludzkich istnień. Byli wśród nich Polacy, Romowie, jeńcy sowieccy, ale przede wszystkim Żydzi, których zgładzono tu przeszło 1 100 000. Mówimy o liczbach, a przecież to konkretni ludzie, ich losy, ich cierpienia. Mówimy o liczbach, choć zapewne nigdy nie poznamy ich dokładnie. Ale mówimy o liczbach, bo jesteśmy w fabryce śmierci, bo liczby uzmysławiają nam przemysłowy charakter popełnionej tutaj zbrodni. Holokaust, którego Auschwitz jest głównym miejscem i symbolem, był zbrodnią wyjątkową w całych dziejach ludzkości. Nienawiść, szowinizm, nacjonalizm, rasizm, antysemityzm przybrały tu postać masowego, zorganizowanego, metodycznego mordu. Nigdy indziej, ani nigdzie indziej nie przeprowadzono eksterminacji ludzi w podobny sposób. Żydzi z Polski, Węgier, Francji, Holandii, Grecji i innych okupowanych krajów w całej Europie byli tu przywożeni bydlęcymi wagonami, poddawani selekcji i pozbawiani całego mienia. I w ogromnej większości natychmiast zabijani w komorach gazowych i spalani w krematoryjnych piecach. Wszystko to trwało zaledwie godziny, kwadranse,
minutes. For years, the factory of death operated at full capacity. Smoke was rising from the chimneys, the transports were rolling. People walked and walked in their thousands to meet their death. It is hard to encompass it all with your mind today. The magnitude of the crime perpetrated in this place is terrifying, but we must not look away from it. And we must never forget it. When the front was approaching to put an end to the crime, the perpetrators attempted to obliterate its traces. They would destroy the buildings and the documents of the genocide. Having slain millions, they also wanted to wipe out the memory of them. However, their attempts failed. Witnesses were saved. of whom you, honorable survivors, are the last ones. And this very place has been preserved, the tangible evidence and the symbol of the Holocaust. Hence, we stand here today on the premises of the former German Auschwitz camp. We stand all together and bow our heads before the suffering of the victims of this most horrendous crime in history, and before the survivors, in the presence of the last witnesses, we do assume an obligation for the future. In the name of the Republic of Poland, who was the first target of Nazi Germany's aggression, whose territory was occupied and its nation was subjected to terror, who established the largest European underground resistance movement against the Third Reich, whose soldiers fought against Germans on all the fronts of the Second World War, from the first to the last day of the war, whose 6 million citizens died at the hands of Nazis, including 3 million Jews, and who makes an utmost effort to preserve this place, the premises of the Auschwitz camp, as well as all the other places of the Shoah, the former German camps located in our territory. I have the privilege and honor, on behalf of the Republic of Poland, to renew the obligation that we Poles assumed back then, when the Holocaust was being carried out, when our forefathers came to the aid of the murdered Jews, putting their own lives at risk, who were the first ones to reveal to the world the truth about the Shoah and demanded that the world's statesmen respond. The obligation to which we, the contemporary Poles, consistently adhere, also for the sake of the memory of our heroic compatriots, to mention Witold Pilecki and Jan Karski. On behalf of the Republic of Poland, it is my privilege and guard to always nurture the memory and guard the truth about what happened here. I wish to invite the distinguished guests gathered here today, representatives of foreign states and nations, as well as international institutions and all people of goodwill from across the world, to participate in this endeavor. Let it be our joint commitment, undertaken before the last survivors and witnesses, to keep carrying into the future the message and the warning for the whole mankind that stem from this place. Distorting the history of the Second World War, denying the crimes of genocide and the Holocaust, as well as an instrumental use of Auschwitz to attain any given goal, is tantamount to desecration of the memory of the victims whose ashes are scattered here. The truth about the Holocaust must not die. The memory of Auschwitz must last so that such extermination is never repeated again. Once again, thank you, honorable survivors, for your testimony and for your presence here today. May the memory of all the victims of Auschwitz live eternally. May the memory of the victims of the Holocaust live eternally.
And now, let us listen to witnesses. May I ask a former Auschwitz inmate, Bathsheba Dagan, to take the floor. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Let me say shalom from Israel. It is difficult for me to hide my feelings. I'm standing here in front of you. I'm not sure whether it is real or whether I'm dreaming that I am here with you 75 years on after what happened here, this great suffering that took place here. My number was 45,554. Schutzhäftling in German is an inmate under protection. Here, then, in that other reality that used to unfold here, this word did not mean actually protection. Care for another human being did not belong there. Human dignity did not belong there either. Quite the opposite. Even if you open a dictionary, you will not find a phrase that would describe how human dignity was trampled. So this word, inmate, and under protection, Schutzhäftling, what was it for? So much despise in there, in this devilish world where human dignity was treated as if it were dirt. There was no way of finding shelter anywhere. I am Häftling. All those people that were in a lager would be surprised, but I did not have a striped uniform because there were too few. And I was given a Russian soldier uniform. I had to wear it on my body directly. And my legs were wrapped in a praying shawl. That shawl that is used by Jews. And I had those Dutch wooden shoes. Mind you, they were uneven. What else did they do to me? First, they tattooed a number on my arm. And it is just as visible today as it was back then. It was very well tattooed indeed. So, I couldn't recognize myself. Those blocks, they had windows very high. I raised my hands, and that is when I recognized myself to be myself. The worst thing that I went through at the very beginning, well, it is hard to say actually what was more painful to me. Whether it was the process of tattooing a number on my arm or something else. I believe, though, that was what was the most hurtful for me was the loss of her, because the her gave me a sense of belonging to womanhood, and they were smooth. This her was my own. And this criminal hand touched my hair. This crown of mine was taken away from me. And I was turned into this pitiful, sad creature. My hand touched a naked skull, and I could see the contour of my face. I couldn't recognize myself. Is it really me? Where is my crown? And in the mirror, I recognized myself, or rather it was not a mirror, it was a glass, a window, and it was really me. Her braids were used for different purposes. Who could think back then that they would be used as a resource for mattresses? However, what they were really after was depriving me of my own human face, and her would grow back, as nature commanded. And there was this dream within my heart. It was still alive. Maybe tomorrow will come one day. And tomorrow did come indeed. Memories remained, though. And let me tell you something else. I worked in 4 commandos in the lager. The first one, I would collect herbs that were somewhat poisonous, and my hands would bleed 12 hours per day. As we sit here, we remember that we would be woken up at 4 a.m. because I was collecting nettle. And actually this nettle was used to make soup. This woman, Aufseher, everybody knows who she was, what this word means. She was really cruel. She had a dog, she had a stick, and she would beat us up. What she wanted was this basket of grass to be not only full but also packed. And I spent many years in this, or rather many months in this commando. And then there was the second one, Kartoffel Commando. I was there rather briefly. There was this Lagerstrasse, the street there. I met my cousin, and she was a doctor's wife. And she worked at what we call a revier. Chimneys, smoking on the one hand, and hospitals on the other. But hospitals, well, that's just a name. And I caught all the diseases you could think of, and I still remember the German names for all those diseases. And there was this itching all the time. I was the first best candidate to be sent to chimneys. Now, Dr. Mengele, when he inspected us, we would have to stand in rows naked, and we would be driven to death. But I said I wouldn't go, and I hid under a bed, under the cover, and somehow I saved myself in this way. And there was another commando later. So I had to kill lies, and I learned then that there are two types of those creatures. The first type of lies live on your heads, and the second type lives in your clothes. So I would kill lies with my fingers. This would be the first job that I had to do in the morning. I had been through a terrible diseases, actually. And Canada was the next commando that I got in. It was the inmates themselves who came up with this name. So I worked in Canada. I'm sure there are people here from Hungary. I would hold Hungarian clothes in my hands. At first, I would cry, but then I had to get used to that, because that was to become my job. There were all those huge piles of clothes from different corners of the world. And there I saw a photograph of my teachers from Lodz. In 1944, the ghetto in Łódź was liquidated. So this was my meeting. So how do you live in such a place? Jewish schools had been closed down, so I decided that I had to learn something. And there were all those languages that surrounded me. 15, maybe more people who work here will know better. So I would hear all those languages that surround me, and I thought I need to learn something. Well, I will learn a language. So I found this Belgian lady, and she became my teacher. I had no pencil, I had no paper, I had nothing to help me. And on I went with my learning. So when I left Auschwitz-Birkenau, I spoke fluent French. There was another thing that I learned here. Poems and melodies that were created by inmates. Krystyna Żywulska was one of them. And her poem became our prayer. It's a very long poem. I'm not going to recite it here. I still know it by heart, like I did all those years ago. So, this poem, Krystyna Żywulska's poem, Marching Out into the Field, was known to me in the camp as Marching Out of the Gate, became our prayer here. The description of our suffering was an expression of each one of us. However, not every prisoner was able to describe the painful reality in such a manner. The main source of strength was the crazy lust of revenge for so much agony and so many complaints, bayonets into the brain and daggers to the neck. The words of revolt wandered from mouth to mouth and only changed slightly depending on the memory and personal associations of female prisoners. The thought of revenge became a source of strength, allowing to endure the long days and nights of inhumane suffering. I continue learning all the time. Now, what helped me to survive was that I myself decided to do something for myself. I decided to choose what I want, rather than following orders. However, I did not get to be liberated on the 27th because we could hear the Russian army approaching, their cannons firing. So basically, I did not get to experience this liberation. I was driven out and made to march. Could I have some water, please? Just a little bit, not much. So that's what I thought back then. So it was a dream about freedom, and a heart beat to the pace of revenge for all that suffering because we had to wait in a queue to death. And various countries in the world did nothing. And I still have this feeling today. Where was everybody? Where was the world who could see that, who could hear that, and yet did nothing to save all those thousands? So what now with the world? It was my dream to learn. Apologies. Let me just say it from the bottom of my heart, rather than reading out from a piece of paper. So, I was meant to liquidate Auschwitz-Birkenau. What was my last job in Canada? Mind you, Canada was a name that Sonderkommando, the inmates, came up with. Canada is a rich country, isn't it? And in Canada, there were all these items brought with them by all those inmates from all these countries. This is where they were collected. And I saw it all. Now, the upside to working in Canada was that you could eat things. We would eat whatever was brought by people. Because people coming here had been told that they were being taken to work. They had been asked to take some food with them. So all this food was being brought to Canada. And we were sickly and thin. We would eat that. Can you eat such things? Well, back then, anything was possible. There was one more thing that helped us to live in this hell. Friendship. You could find a group of people who would help one another. Shoah, the Holocaust, are not only about the terrible things. And what about the righteousness among the nations that helped? There are many other things, subjects that can be told to children. I had the struggle, namely, I would like the subject to be introduced at an earlier stage. Why so? In various countries where children are 13, 15 years old, it's already too late. Because at this point they are undergoing certain physiological changes. And what they think about is themselves and their position in a social group. So a question: is it necessary to teach that subject? Is it possible? I have an answer to those questions. Yes, it is very much necessary, and it is by all means possible. Why is it truly necessary? We live in the world of the media, and we have those phones, iPhones, whatever its name is. People play with those objects, even toddlers. So children grow up playing with those iPhones, and they know more than we would like them to know. For that reason, this subject, this topic needs to be taught as early as possible. Well, in Israel, it's different because we have those sounds. Children ask why they hear those sounds. However, in other countries, they don't have that. I'm sure there are teachers here. I'm addressing the teachers at this point. First, you need to learn what children know and what is the source of their knowledge. You need to learn what they would like to know. I've been to various places. I've been to Argentina, to Canada. I've been to America many a time, and I spent 3 years in England. I wanted to learn, so the first thing that I did was I picked up Hebrew very fast. I went to this teaching college. Also, I worked as a kindergarten teacher. Children would approach me about why I had this thing written. Well, for 40 years I'd been looking for an answer. Mind you, in museum you have 4 books in Polish. They have been translated from Hebrew. Well, for the most part. They are meant to be used in schools. What else should I say? Maybe that I would like to cry, because only with tears I can tell you about this past. I can see so many people here. You are a source of comfort to us. I hope you will all try to preserve the memory of this place and other sites where people, innocent people, died. People from various nations. I hope that you will make sure you'll bear this responsibility so that this terrible thing will never happen again. Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask a former Auschwitz inmate, Elsa Baker, to take the floor.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I now request a testimony from a former inmate of Auschwitz, Mr. Marian Turski. My dear comrades of the horrors in the camp, distinguished guests, distinguished visitors to this place, friends, I am but one of those who are still alive. Few who were here in this place almost until the last moment before the liberation. On the 18th of January, my so-called evacuation started, evacuation from this camp, from Auschwitz, and after 6.5 days, it ended. It turned out to be the death march for more than every other co-inmates, my fellow inmates. We walked together as a column of 600 people. According to all probability, I will not live to see another jubilee here. This is how it goes. So please forgive me that there will be some emotions in what I'm going to say. Now, this is what I would like to say, to tell primarily to my daughter, to my granddaughter who is here in this room, and I would like to thank her for that, to my grandson as well. But I'm mostly after those who are the peers of my daughter and my grandchildren, the younger generations, especially the youngest, those who are even younger than they are. When the World War broke out, I was but a teenager. In the First World War, my father was a soldier, and he was shot into his lungs, and that kept repeating. That was a drama for our family, and it went on and on. My mother hailed from the Polish, Lithuanian, Belarusian borderland. Armies went forth and back. They pillaged, raped, burned villages, not to leave anything for those who were coming after them. So you could say that I had first-hand experience of war. Nonetheless, even though it was only 20, 25 years apart, those times seemed so distant, like those Polish 19th century uprisings, like the French Revolution. And that was only 20 years away. So when today I meet young people, I perfectly well realize that after 75, if not 80 years, people get somewhat bored. They find war, Shoah, Holocaust somewhat of a boring subject, just like genocide. And I actually understand them. That is why I promise to you, the young, that I'm not telling you about my suffering. I'm not telling you about what I experienced, my 2 death marches, how I finished the war weighing 32 kilo, really on the verge of life, utterly exhausted. I'm not telling the things that were worst, the worst, the tragedy of the farewells, of parting with the near and dear, when after the selection you see and you sense their fate. No, I'm not telling you about that. What I would like to pass to my daughter, to my grandchildren, and to their generations, I would like to tell you something about you yourselves. I see we have among us the President of Austria, Mr. Alexander van der Bellen. Do you remember, Mr. President, when you hosted me and the management of the International Auschwitz Committee? We discussed those days. You used such a phrase: Auschwitz ist nicht vom Himmel gefallen. Auschwitz did not fall down from the skies. You could say, that's an obvious thing. Absolutely obvious. It did not. This may even seem a hackneyed phrase, quite commonplace perhaps, yet this is a profound shortcut in our thinking, and it helps to understand certain things. Let's use our imagination and our thoughts to get to the early 1930s, to Berlin. We find ourselves in the center of Berlin. Bayerische Viertel, the Bavarian district, is the name of that district. It's just 3 stops away from the Tiergarten, the zoo. There is a station of the metro there. There is Baryschew Park. And one day, in those early 1930s, you can read an inscription on the benches. Jews must not sit on these benches. You could say, it's unpleasant, it's not fair, it's not right. But after all, there are so many benches around. You can sit somewhere else. Of course you can. In that district, and that was a district that was inhabited by intellectuals, by the intelligentsia, German, of Jewish origin. Albert Einstein used to live there. Nelly Sachs, the Nobel Prize winner, a politician and industrialist, Walter Rathenau, who was Minister of Foreign Affairs. There was a swimming pool, and over its door an inscription read, Jews are forbidden to enter. You could say, well, pleasant this is not, but there are so many places in Berlin where you can take a bath or swim, so many lakes, canals, it's nearly like Venice. At the same time, you can read somewhere else, Jews must not belong to German singing associations. So what? All right, they want to sing, they want to make music. Let them just meet somewhere else, they will do their singing. All right. What comes up later is an order, really, more of an order than of an inscription. Non-Aryan children must not play with Aryan children. with the German children. All right, they'll play on their own. And then you read we only sell bread and food to Jews after 5 p.m. All right, less choice. This makes your life harder. But after all, after 5 p.m. you can still do your shopping. Now, I warn you, I'm getting used to a thought. That thought that someone may be excluded becomes mediated into our lives. The thought that somebody can be stigmatized, that someone may be alienated. And that's how it is done, step by step, slowly. People begin to see that this is something normal. Both victims and the perpetrators, the witnesses, those whom we in English call bystanders, those who see it become familiar, and they become acquainted with that thought, familiar with the idea that the minority that produced Einstein, Nelly Sachs, Henry Heine, Mendelssohn's, and many Nobelists, that it is different, that it can be pushed beyond the margin of the society, that they are different people, that they are alien people, that they are the people that carry germs, that cause pandemics. And this now is a horror that's dangerous. This is where what may happen soon takes its origin. And let me tell you, if you consider that, and if we remember the words of Mr. President, power that at that time ran sly policy. For example, they met all the claims of workers. The 1st of May was never celebrated. All right, they gave you a day that was free from work. They introduced Kraftig heute, so a special holiday for workers. They could also fight unemployment. They knew how to play on the dignity of a nation. Germans move up from the shame of Treaty of Versailles. Have your pride back. And that government also saw that people were slowly engulfed by this lack of sensitivity. They ceased to react to evil. And that was the moment when that government could speed up the process of evil. What came later was something that developed immediately. Jews could not get jobs, they could not emigrate, and then quickly Jews would be sent to ghettos, to Kaunas, to Riga, to my ghetto, the Litzmannstadt, that's a Łódź ghetto. Most people from there were later sent to Kulmhof, Chełmno on the Ner, where they were murdered in lorries with exhaust gases. And the rest will make their way to Auschwitz, where in a very modern way and manner, they were murdered with Zyklon B in all those modern gas chambers. And here you see how the words of the president come true. Auschwitz did not fall suddenly from the skies. It was pittering, pattering in all those tiny steps. It was approaching until what happened here behind me did happen. My daughter, my granddaughter, peers of my daughter, peers of my granddaughter, you do not have to know the name of Primo Levi. Primo Levi was one of the most famous inmates of this camp. Primo Levi once used that phrase, "This happened," which means that it may happen again, which means that it may happen anywhere in this world. May I share one personal memory with you? In 1965, I went for a scholarship to the US, to America. And that was the peak, the acme of that battle for human rights, for civil rights, for the Afro-Americans. It was my honor to participate in a march with Martin Luther King from Selma to Montgomery. And then people who learned that I had been an inmate of Auschwitz would ask me, "How do you think? It must have been only in Germany, or do you think it could happen somewhere else?" And then I told them, it can also happen in your country, in this land, when the civil rights are broken, when people do not obey the laws of minorities, when you do away with the rights of minorities. If you bend law, as it was done in Selma, this may come to be. What to do? There is only one way out. Only you, if you are capable of defending your constitution, defending your laws and your rights, your democratic order, which is based on the protection of minority rights, only then will you be able to conquer all that evil. My dear, here in Europe, most of us hail from the tradition called Judeo-Christian. Both the believers but also the non-believers assume as their civilizational canon the Ten Commandments. My friend, my closest friend, the president of the International Auschwitz Committee, Roman Kent, who spoke here 5 years ago during the previous Jubilee. He couldn't arrive today, he couldn't fly in today. He's frail, he's been sick lately. But he invented the 11th commandment. The 11th commandment that is an experience of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, which is the experience of that horrible time of disdain. And that 11th is, be not indifferent. Thou shalt not be indifferent. And this is what I would like to tell you. My daughter, my grandchildren. I'd like to tell it to the peers of my daughter, my grandchildren, wherever they live, be it Poland, be it Israel, be it America, be it Western Europe, the Eastern Europe. Yes, precisely, the Eastern Europe. It is very important here. Do not be indifferent when you see lies, historical lies. Do not be indifferent when you see that the past is stretched to fit the current political needs. Do not be indifferent when any minority is discriminated, because the essence of democracy is that majority governs, but democracy hinges on the rights of minorities being protected, and they have to be protected. At the same time,